created to have some fun together, sharing and singing. So, join and enjoy.
Our love for opera brings us together. Thanks for being with us in this trip.
Hello, hello. Thank you very much for joining me for another program of the series Parlons. Today we are going to talk about L'Elisir d'Amore, one of the greatest creations by Gaetano Donizetti. And if you're familiar with this opera, I think you may agree with me that whenever one thinks of this splendid opera, one thinks of La Joie de Vivre, this happiness, this joy of being alive is perfectly portrayed in this opera, of which, of course, we are going to be sharing some of details and comments, anecdotes even around this very, 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 very energizing opera by Maestro Donizetti. Of course, if you know Donizetti's style, you know that he's part of the bel cantismo. His style with moderate orchestration, these brilliant moments in the opera that we will be talking about a little further. But first things first. What is L'Elisir d'Amore? I think L'Elisir it's just an excuse to provide the audience, to provide the public, to provide to people a reason to be in a good sense of humor. Even when you are in trouble, one cannot get away from those very sticky melodies, those very funny characters, and everything that happens on stage. And to start talking a little more about this La Joie de Vivre that I think, or that I would like to say, that it makes me think every time I hear L'Elisir d'Amore, we have to start saying or sharing with you that, of course, there is a love triangle. You know, whenever there is an opera, it seems like a mandate that we need to have this sort of competition between the characters for the love of the prima donna, which in this case is going to be again a soprano. You know, there are very few exceptions when there is a mezzo. This case again, it is a soprano, and of course that means that the tenor and the baritone are competing somehow for the love of the soprano. If you know the opera already, you know that the names of the characters here are Adina, the soprano, the woman that both the baritone and the tenor are going after, the tenor, the very well-known Nemorino, whose name really does not mean anything else other than just Nemorino. Nice name, by the way. And we have the baritone, the antagonist of the tenor, that is called Belcore. By the way, Belcore is a name, and I am sure that it happens in many countries, that the name usually means something else in the language of the country where this name takes place. And in the case of Belcore, it may mean in English something like beautiful heart, which is a sort of a contradiction because the only guy that is kind of, if not miserable or nasty, at least not a nice guy, is Belcore himself. But we will talk about that. And we also have the guy that makes the whole plot keep running, because without this guy we wouldn't have anything of the opera. There would be no reason for the things to be happening as they are happening on stage. You all know that this guy is a bass. I will give you a little more details about this tessitura and about the character of the bass, but you have to be aware that this character that is absolutely important for everything to happen is the guy called Dulcamara. And so we are going to talk about the role of Dulcamara, that of course is as lovely as the other three that I mentioned before, but I think that it's time to start talking in more detail about it. So there is this triangle of love, Belcore, Nemorino, Adina, and there is this Dulcamara that will give the key to why it is called l'Elisir d'Amore. And before we jump into detail to that, let's talk about the melodies. If you ever listen to this opera, even if you don't know it, just pay attention to the music and the interventions of the singers. You will notice that it has plenty of these melodies that are so easy to recall because they are basically and they are very basic and they are very simple. Donizetti does not want to portray anything complicated. If you allow me, I would like to compare it to La Fille du Régiment, where you also have sort of a tragic story somehow, but the characters are so funny and are so appealing that you even forget that there is a drama there. Opposite to what happens in Lucia di Lammermoor, where, of course, even if there are spectacular notes and everything on stage, the moment you see the soprano on stage with her clothes in blood, it's not something nice to see, to watch on stage. But of course, the purpose, the intention of the opera Lucia di Lammermoor by the same author, Gaetano Donizetti, is different. We are going back to l'Elisir, where we have nice sticky notes, great melodies, and if you recall how it opens, there are melodies. I will be, in Spanish we say tarareando, which is somehow trying to share with you the melody. So you recall that in the very nice very nice overture, you can hear some of the motifs or the melodies that will be happening later. So as it starts, you listen to a very nice melody. Tararan, tararan, taran, taran. Tararan, taran, tararan, tararan, taran, taran, tararan, taran, tararan, tararan, taran, taran. And you also have there to Nemorino, and as he's the first of the main characters that we see appear on the stage, Nemorino is the tenor. And Nemorino is a very lovely guy. He's kind of tender, not so smart, very innocent, like candid. Nemorino is written to make people feel love for somebody who is weak in a sense. Yeah, of course, when you compare him to Belcore, of whom we will talk a little later. But when you think of Nemorino, he's so fragile. So his intentions are so direct, so nicely portrayed that one always ends up loving Nemorino. Who is Nemorino written for? And maybe I should say it now because it applies for all the characters on the stage. Unfortunately, even if it is a great opera, unfortunately, and I will explain the reason for my unfortunately, L'Elisir d'Amore is not an opera for you to build an impressive career worldwide. Lucia di Lammermoor is, of course, if you are one of the greatest Lucias, everybody will know who you are. Traviata is, if you want to be one of the best Traviata singers, of course it is. If you want to sing another Verdian role or a Puccinian role, like if you are Scarpia or as if you are Don Carlo, you can always build a name around the world and throughout history on your performances of those operas, but unfortunately that is not the case for L'Elisir d'Amore. Nobody is really interested. You're the best Adina of the world. Okay. You have, except for the aria for Nemorino that we will talk about later, no one really cares about you being the greatest Nemorino on stage or being the greatest Belcore or the greatest Dulcamara. And it is because people don't consider L'Elisir d'Amore as one of the greatest operas to base your whole career on. And the reason for that is somehow because it is not, vocally speaking, it is not a very difficult opera to sing. It is not as challenging as other creations by the same author. The Three Queens by Donizetti, it's not that. It is not Lucia. It is not Norma by Bellini. It is not Turandot. It is, or these are roles. These are the music written for the voices is nice, with a few passages that can be complicated, but nothing you can build a career on. That is unfair, but that is unfair somehow. But that is also a good reason for singers who do not have. I mean, not everybody is Violetta Valery singing that those high notes in the Sempre Libera. Not everybody is Turandot. Not everybody is Manon Lescaut. But you can build, or you can have something very, very, very nice by building your career on this repertory. Because you can do something very, very, very nice with this role. With that being said, let's go back to Nemorino. So Nemorino is not an impressive lyrical tenor. He's in fact more leaning to a light lyric tenor, which means he does not have a powerful voice, he does not have powerful notes. His voice is somehow easily covered by the orchestra or the other singers, to be sincere. But on the other hand, Nemorino, the very first moment he is on stage, needs to be lovely. That fragility and innocence you have to portray. Otherwise, nobody is going to buy that you are that innocent and lovely Nemorino. And he starts by singing Quanto è bella, quanto è bella, quanto è cara, più la vedo e più mi piace, ma in quel cor non son capace lieve affetto ad inspirar. You know that I like in this series to share you somehow, even by marcando, how the melody goes by. Of course, my voice, as with other previous programs, is not the right fit for this role. My voice is not is way too heavy and different for a role like this. So if I try to make it lighter, it will sound even funnier. But I will try to do it just to give you an idea that when he says "Quanto è bella, quanto è cara," oh, how charming, how lovely that she is. Of course, she is referring to Adina. When I see her, I am adoring. The more I see her, the more I love her. But ma in quel cor non son capace lievi effetto ad inspirar. But I am unable to inspire on her even the slightest of tenderness or love. So with his first words, we understand that there is nothing that Nemorino would like more than to mean something to Adina. But it is true that he doesn't get it, because he says, essa legge, studia, impara, non vi cosa dessa ignota, io son sempre un idiota, io non so che sospirar. But now, referring to her as not only a beautiful woman, but a cultivated one, because she reads, she studies everything, because she's always reading, she's always learning. And me, what about me? I am nothing but an idiot that cannot do anything but to lament that she doesn't love me. If this was another opera like Puccini, this would be a tremendous drama with the orchestration, the violins, and all of that. But in the case of Donizetti and Nemorino, it is very lovely and light when he says, Quanto è bella, quanto è cara, più la vedo e più mi piace, ma in quel cor non son capace lieve affetto ad inspirar. Essa legge studia, ignota, io son sempre un idiota, io non so che sospirar. Then he goes for the score says a piacere, so it is more than song. This part is almost quasi parlato. Quanto è cara, quanto è bella. And then goes back to the same melody. Quanto è bella, quanto è cara. Ta-ra-ra-ra-ra-ra-ra. Ma in quel cor la 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 la. And right after this very lovely introduction, I was telling you, think of it, but with a lighter voice, a much nicer, lighter voice of a very young, innocent guy portraying the love that he has for her. Then there is the choir that joins his voice. Que when he says, chi mi insegna farmi amar. So the choir and the Nemorino wrap up this lovely opening of the opera, and right after that, it is the time for Adina. I was telling you, Adina is the soprano, the main love interest of our lovely Nemorino, and she opens with a cavatina that is also a very lovely piece. And let me tell you a couple of things about Adina. Adina, even though she doesn't pay much attention to the love of Nemorino, she's not a bad woman. It's just that she's not interested in him. She's not cruel. She's not really disdainful. She's just not interested in our lovely guy. And you cannot force anyone to love you. That real life tells us about. And also, let's talk a little more about the voice of Adina. I was telling you that there is no soprano who can build her career on being the greatest Adina of all times, because it is a lovely role, but it is not their role. It is, I was telling you, it is not Turandot, it is not Lucia, it is not Manon, it is not Violetta Valerie, it is just Adina. But it doesn't mean that you have to be a lousy singer to do it. In fact, Adina has to have a very lovely voice, a very homogeneous voice. And moreover, now I need to mention it now, one needs to believe and to feel the chemistry between Adina and Nemorino. If on a stage there is no chemistry amongst these two guys, between these two guys, then the whole opera will be, if not a failure, at least not as appealing as one would think. So Adina opens her sing with a risa, ridendo, laughing. Of course, I cannot laugh in a way that it can be believable, but you just think of a very a laughing by an with a voice, an impostation. And right after that, she says, "Benedete queste carte e bizzarra l'avventura." And the chorus says, "Di che ridi fane parte, di tua lepida lettora." And she says, "E la storia di Tristano, una cronica d'amor." And now, before I forget, she mentions that she's reading the story of Tristan. If you're familiar with this mythology, the story between Tristan and Isolde, and there is also an elixir d'amore. There is this elixir to make people fall in love with you. So this is just an anticipation to what is going to happen later, because she's talking about this story, la storia di Tristano è una cronica d'amor. And the chorus says, "Leggi, leggi, leggi, leggi," inviting her to please read us the story to us. And then approaches Nemorino, because of course he wants to hear to the story that Adina is going to share with the people. And so Adina says, "Della crudele Isota il bel Tristano ardea, nel fil de speme avea di possederla un dì. Love for the cruel Isolde in Tristan's heart was burning, though Vain was all his yearning. Fate had not meant it to be. So in the story that Alina is sharing with us, similar to what is happening now on stage, Isolde will not correspond to Tristan's love. Quando si trasse ai piedi di saggio incantatore che in un vasselli diede certo elisir d'amor, per cui la bella Isotta da lui più non foggi. So she's telling us the story that Tristan falls or runs into a magician, and the magician shares with him this elixir that will make Isolda fall in love for him. More pay attention to this because this is what is going to happen later, of course in a much happier way. Elise and then moves the rhythm as she tells the story in a much faster rhythm. Elisir si perfetta di si rara qualità, ne sapessi la ricetta, conoscessi che ti fa. And then the chorus goes with caring. Elisir di si perfetta di si rara qualità, ne sapessi la ricetta, conoscessi che ti fa, sì che ti fa. Then we go back to leggi, 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 inviting her to continue the story. And so Alina says, appena i beve un sorso del magico vassello, che tosto il corro bello di sota intenneri. As soon as he had tasted that potion, Isota, the cold heart of Isota, now is warming up in love for him. Proof that the elixir d'amore has worked between Tristan and Isolda. Cambiata in un istante, quella beltà crudele fu di Tristano amante, visiat strano fedele, e quel primiero sorso per sempre benedì. So Tristan blessed the having tried that elixir, because now Isotta decided to spend the rest of her life in love with him. What a happy ending, right? And then goes back to the same part that I shared with you earlier. Elisir di si perfetta, di si rara qualità, conoscessi che ti fa elisir, and then there are a few ornaments by the soprano, ascending scales and ornaments, just to, because it is, it is always nice to listen to ornaments. And of course it ends her scene with a nice high note. And so by far we are all happy. But now it is also time for us to meet the antagonist of Nemorino, the so-called Belcore, who is part of the militia and portrays a man that is detestable. One cannot love this arrogant guy who happens to be after the love of Adina. Of course, we said it is a triangle, right? So he enters the stage and he presents himself with all the arrogance, with all the possible arrogance. But not only he's part of the militia, we also need to mention that physically, when it is well portrayed on a stage, one sees that Belcore is a handsome guy, the militia, with that strong personality. While on the other hand, you have Nemorino, a young, innocent guy, candid and nice, but if you put yourself in the shoes of the soprano, who would you choose? Even if he is arrogant, that means the presence, physically speaking, Belcore is much more attractive than Nemorino, and Nemorino knows it. So after having introduced him with with his very personal way of Belcore of doing things, and they end up that scene making fun of Nemorino, because Belcore, of course, is aware that Nemorino isn't interested in Adina. So, and Belcore knows who he is, right? He knows that Nemorino is nothing compared to him. So they have this is not a confrontation, but I would like to call it now bullying. He likes to bully, and he bullies Nemorino on stage. And when Belcore has left the stage, there is two people left on the stage. Now it is Nemorino and Adina again. And here comes one of the most beautiful, I'm not sure if I should call it a love duet, because still there is no love between Adina and Nemorino. It is from Nemorino to Adina, but not backwards, not from her to him. But the way it is written, it is very lovely. And I would like at this point to invite you to listen to the recording. Go look for it in YouTube, because there is a number of people who have uploaded it there already. The recording by Maria Callas and Giuseppe Di Stefano of this duet. I need to say that this duet was recorded by the two of them in the days they had passed their voices. The good condition of their voices was already gone by, so they are not in the best of the conditions. But I think it is better, and the reason why I think it is better, because you have to think of, or you have to keep in mind, that both Di Stefano and Callas have been two of the greatest, if not the two greatest, interpreters of all times. Callas and Di Stefano always paid attention not only to the notes, but on the intention of the phrase, of the character they were portraying, of each. They paid attention to each of the syllables of what they were singing. With that being said, you will not find, from my perspective, any other recording with so much care on each of the phrases and syllables. And even if you allow me to say that, it is good that they recorded it when their primes were past, because now, since they have much smaller voices, now they can do it, from my perspective, much better. So the duet starts with "Una parola, o Adina," and Adina replies, "L'usata seccatura, i soliti sospiri faresti meglio a recarti in città presso tuo zio, che dice malato e gravemente. Il suo mal non è niente appresso al mio, partirmi non possio. Mille volte il tentai." And let me remind you, now that I was mentioning it to you, if you notice, this is not really song. This is, again, if not parlato, it is quasi parlato. And this is where you can find the great attention that Maria and people paid to this duet. Because every phrase, every intonation, the pronunciation is just perfect. One can really believe that both Adina and Nemorino are young, and they are sharing a duet with the innocence that two young people could have. And so, this first part, that is sort of a dialogue more than a singing part. They still talk about the "E che me importa morrai di fame senza appoggio alcuno, o di fame d'amor, per me tutt'uno." Adina answers, "Listen, you are honest, you are modest, not like the silly sergeant, Belcore, who is so sure of winning my affection, and so I tell you truly, it is hopeless to look in my direction, for I am too capricious, I have no wishes. I may love for a moment, but never longer." So he's, if you allow me to the expression, he's putting Nemorino in his place. Okay, listen here. So just don't be so in love with me. I am not good for you. "Oh, dimmi, tu sei buono, modesto sei, né al par di quel sergente, ti credo certo di ispirarmi affetto, così ti parlo schieto e ti dico che invano amor tu speri, che capricciosa io sono e non fa brama che in me tosto non muoia appena resta. And Nemorino says, Adina, e perché mai? And why? Why could you never again? Why could you not love me any longer? And so Adina replies, Bella richiesta. And that's where the duet actually starts. The more song part starts with very delicate, soft ornaments in some of the parts that provide us with an insight of the nice souls of both Adina and Nemorino. No excess, no absolute showing off on stage. It's just, the mood of the two of them. Nemorino, right after those words by Adina, says, Don Chiodeggio. Adina says, All'amor mio, rinunciar, fuggir da me. And Nemorino goes, Cara Adina, non posso. Adina says, tu non puoi, perché? And Nemorino says, perché? And now replies with a similar melody as to Adina's, chiede al rio perché gemente e nel mal senza morir ti dirà che l'ostra scina un poter che non sa dire, un poter che non sa dir. And she replies, per guarir di tal pazzia, che pazzia l'amor costante, dei seguir l'usanza mia, ogni dì cambiar d'amante, come chiodo scaccio chiodo, così amor di scaccia amor. In tal guisa io me la godo, in tal guisa ho sciolto il cor, in tal guisa ho sciolto il cor, in tal guisa ho sciolto il cor. And then replies again, now Nemorino, a te sogno vero sento, giorno e notte in ogni oggetto, d'obliarti invano sento, il tuo viso ascolto in petto, col cambiarsi qual tu fai, puoi cambiarsi ogni altro amor, ma non può mai il primiero uscir dal cor. And then reply, sì, no, sì, no, non può, sì, uscir dal cor. And then the duet goes ahead, but I really invite you to listen to that performance by Maria Callas and Giuseppe Di Stefano. Really, it's just so lovely. Nothing compared to any other rendition I have heard before. And before we jump to our star of the night, to Mr. Dul Camara, I would also like to take a time to share with you a couple of things about this opera. I have insisted a number of times that there is no artist who can actually build a career around this opera, and that it is also then a great opportunity for many singers to demonstrate that they are not only good singers, but that they can be great actors. This opera, as any opera that is buffa, really demands people who are believably great actors who can bring this believability to their characters. Just think of a baritone. Think of a Verdian baritone, serious, strong, you know, with these loud, strong, high notes. Verdi and baritone trying to sing Belcore with the same attitude. It will just not work. Belcore is not Don Carlo in La Forza del Destino. Is not, as in the case of Aida, is not the father of Aida. It's a very lovely baritone. That is the case of Belcore. So this opera is a very good chance for smaller companies, opera companies, university or smaller theaters to put it on a stage, because it gives room to not only creativity, but it gives the opportunity to singers who are starting their careers to not only to gain experience on a stage, but also to invite people to have a great time there. And I would like to recall, I had the opportunity of attending a performance at the Conservatorio Nacional de Música in Mexico. People, or the graduates from that conservatory, called it the cons, el cons. So this performance was as el cons. Of course, all of them were students of the opera singing career there at the conservatory, which means they were very young. And this opera is portrayed, it is actually for young people. Belcore is young, except for Dulcamara. Belcore is young, Adina is young, Nemorino is young. So when you have that power, that strength, that light inside your heart of being young, you think that nothing can stop you. You're still someone who sees life with love. That is exactly the spirit that one brings to L'Elisir d'Amore. And that's the thing that I could see in that performance. All of them very happy, very, very young, very happy, with their voices still in the works, in the road to becoming better singers, but so happy to, they really deliver themselves to the role. They enjoyed it. This has been one of my greatest experiences, when you see the number of young, talented people singing with so much love, their notes of the choir, their notes of Adina, their notes of Nemorino, their notes of Belcore. One really, really, really thinks that music has a purpose in the life of people. That's the first thing that I wanted to tell you. Now, going to Dulcamara, nothing would happen if we didn't have, in Spanish we say a charlatan, because Mr. Dulcamara is somebody, who sells things that are really good for nothing, but people like to believe that they really work for anything. And Nemorino, as he heard the story of Adina and learned that Tristan and Isolda fell in love because of an elixir, he says, I really need one of those. And when Dulcamara enters on stage and she starts when saying, Odite, odite, orostici, attenti, non flattate. And since he's like, if you allow me to make this comparison, I would like to say that he's somehow like in Il Barbiere di Siviglia, Figaro himself. Dulcamara is somehow to L'Elisir d'Amore the same way Figaro is to Il Barbero di Siviglia. And so in the same way, Figaro portrays or describes or introduces himself by largo al factotum de la città, largo. Dulcamara will introduce with himself with his aria, and also a very funny aria similar to Figaro's. Io già suppongo e immagino che al par de me sappiate ch'io sono quel gran medico, dottore enciclopedico, chiamato Dulcamara, la cui dei portenti infiniti son noti all'ogni verso e in altri siti. And provided that Dulcamara is a very funny character, we are expecting the bass to do, if not whatever it pleases him, at least to be creative in the way he's singing. In altri siti, playing with the notes, playing with the length of the notes, playing with the intention of the notes. Benefattor degli uomini, riparator dei mali, in pochi giorni sgomberò, io pazzo gli spedali e la salute a vendere, per tutto il mondo io vo, compratela, per poco ve la do, compratela, per poco ve la do, compratela, per poco ve la do. And if you recall also the construction of the opera, of the aria by Figaro, there is also a part where he goes faster and faster and faster and faster. It happens the same, but now recall that it is a bass that is singing, and there is also these very complicated syllables that make it almost a tongue twister. So think of our very lovely dulcamaras trying to sing something nice, attractive, funny, and at the same time dealing with a tongue twister. E questo l'odontalgico mirabile liquore dei topi dei cimici possente di distruttore. Of course, I am trying to read it, but even reading it, it's kind of complicated and one can mess up very easily with the words. Il cul certificati autentici volati, toccar vedere leggete a ciaschedun farò, per questo mio specifico, simpatico, prolifico, un uomo settagenario e valetudinario, non ho di 10 bamboli, ancora diventò, di 10 o 20 bamboli, fin'anno diventò, per questo tocca e sana, in brevi settimana, più d'un'afflitta vedova di piangere cessò. O vai matrone rigide, ringiovanni bramate, le vostre rughe incomode con esso cancellate, volete voi donzelle, vi lasce ver le pele, voi giovani galanti, per sempre avere amanti, comprate il mio specifico, per poco ve lo do, da bravi giovinotti, da bravi vedovete, comprate il mio specifico, per poco ve lo do, e i movi paralitici, spedisce gli apopletici, gli asmatici, gli asfitici, gli isterici, i diabetici, guarisci, timpatici e scrofole rachitidi, e fino il madi fegato che in moda diventò, mirabile pencimici, mirabile pelgato, guarisci paralitici, spedisci gli apopletici, comprate il mio specifico, voi vedove donzelle, voi giovani galanti, per poco ve lo do, avanti vedove, avanti bamboli, comprate il mio specifico, per poco ve lo do, sì, per poco ve lo do, sì, per poco ve lo do, sì, per poco ve lo do. And if you haven't run out of breath, then you can continue with his aria. L'ho portato per la posta da lontano 1000 miglia, mi direste quanto costa? Quanto vale la bottiglia? 100 scudi? No! 30? No! 20? No! Nessuno si sgomenti per provarvi il mio contento, dissiamico accoglimento, io vi voglio buona gente, uno scudo regalare. And then the choir replies, uno scudo veramente più bravo non si può dar. Ecco qua così stupendo, al balsamico e l'Isere, tutta Europa passi vendo, niente men di nove. You see how it can be complicated. Europa sa chiudendo niente men di 9 lire, ma siccome pur palese che io sono nato nel paese, per 3 lire a voi lo cedo, sol 3 lire a voi richiedo. And there comes this lovely mood. Usually it changes between, sometimes, depends on what performance you're watching. The bass usually says, Música maestro, or Música someone else. Ta 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 ta. Così chiaro è come il sole, che a ciascuno che lo vuole uno scudo bello intento in saccoccia faccio entrar. Uno scudo bello e netto in saccoccia faccio entrar, in saccoccia faccio entrar. È verissimo, perdete, ecco, ta 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 ta, 3 lire, gran dottore che voi siete, tra la 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 la. Still the chord, ta 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 ta. Ta 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 ta. Adi Patri il calvo affetto, gran miracoli può far. Adi Patri il calvo affetto, gran miracoli può far. At this point, maybe we should mention that the role of Dulcamara, this guy that sings this super long introduction aria, and besides being a tongue twister and being the funniest one on stage, it is also written in a high tessitura for a bass. So most basses, more when they are mature, find it difficult to sing Dulcamara. So it is sometimes easier when a young bass sings it, because it is a complicated tessitura, too high for a bass. So he will end up his aria by saying, Adi Patre il dolce affetto, gran miracoli può far. Adi Patre il dolce affetto, gran miracoli può far. Sì, sì, può far. Sì, sì, può far. Sì, può far. Of course, it depends on the singer. And if he has agreed with the orchestra director on how he wants to wrap his aria, they usually keep the high note for long. That is tradition in opera, that singers like to show what they are capable of. And right after that, of course, right after the introduction of Dulcamara, Nemorino has approached Dulcamara to tell him, hey guy, do you happen to have an elixir that, like the one in Tristan and Isolda, the one that can make a woman fall in love with me? Of course, Dulcamara replies, of course, I do have it. And so he ends up selling wine to Nemorino, who ends up being drunk. And by being drunk, he thinks that things are happening different between him and Adina. And it is in fact that they are happening different, but not because she's falling in love for him, but because he is drunk. At this point, I would like to mention, previously I shared with you the anecdote around this representation of L'Elisir d'Amore in the Conservatory of Mexico. But now I would like to mention that I had the chance of watching recently a video on YouTube from Il Teatro Real de Madrid, if I recall well. This theater in Spain, with a very, I would say, a very nice cast, in the sense that the characters, Nemorino, Adina, Belcore, Dulcamara himself, were so it was so nice to see those singers having fun on stage, that I really loved it. Of course, it can be contended that that representation itself was so out of the canons, because they represented it on the beach. So the Dulcamara is not really with the army, but is the man who is conquering everyone on at the beach. Nemorino is a lifeguard, but a young, innocent lifeguard. And Dulcamara is a guy who is selling drugs on the beach. So maybe at this point you can be telling yourself that it is absolutely insane to portray l'Elysir d'Amore in such a stage. But you know what? From my perspective again, I liked it somehow. You know, the freshness of this composition by Donizetti, and that they somehow came up with the idea of representing it on what is a beach. For me, it worked. Of course, it has nothing to do what is written on the libretto. That thing of selling drugs on the beach, at least if you want to close your eyes to reality. I mean, people, drugs now, unfortunately, are everywhere. So with that in mind, I loved that representation by the Teatro Real de Madrid. You can also go into YouTube and look for that. But now going back to Mr. Nemorino, now drunk, that's that famous scene, almost wrapping up the first act with la 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 la. But remember that he's drunk. So the tenor has to be very funny and believable on stage so that people can really believe that he's actually drunk, right? So if he's tumbling all over the stage and his voice la 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 la, not with a perfect impostation, it still makes sense because Nemorino is drunk. And now Adina says, what happens with this guy? He's not paying attention to me as before. And as in the case of many women that you may know, one of them, when you stop paying attention to them is when they are paying attention back. So she starts paying attention to Nemorino, like what happens to him? Why is he not paying attention to me anyhow any longer? And so they have this short, very lovely duet around this story that he is not paying attention to her any longer, that he thinks that the elixir is going to work, but because now he has noticed that Adina is turning her face to him. But the truth is that that's not happening. So Adina says, Dunque l'antico fuoco si estinguirà fra poco, replies Nemorino. Ancora un giorno solo il core guarirà. Adina says, Davvero? Really? Are you going to forget me? Me ne consolo, ma pure si vedrà. Un giorno solo si vedrà, rivedrò. E sulti pur la barbara, pe poco le mie pene. And she says, spezzar vorrà lo stolido, gettar le sue catene. Domano avranno termine, domano m'amerà, ma gravido più il solito, pesar le sentirà. E sulti pur la barbara, spezzar vorrà lo stolido, spezzar vorrà lo stolido, gettar le sue catene, ma più gravi più del solito, pesar le sentirà. And again, you know, in this very lovely duet, now Nemorino insists, domano avranno termine, domani m'amerà. Domani m'amerà, sì che m'amerà, in the hope that she will end up loving him, but at least at the end of this duet and at the end of this act, that's not happening. In the second act, we have another very lovely melody opening by Dulcamara. Bravo, bravo, Dulcamara, ta 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 ta. Taratan 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 taratan, and it is in fact the same barcarola that will wrap up the whole opera. What happens here right after this is that Nemorino needs more money to buy more elixir from Dulcamara, but he has no money, so he learns from Belcore, his antagonist, that people who enrolled in the army will be paid a given amount of money. So he enrolls, he's about to be living, to get that money, to be able to buy more elixir. Adina learns of it, and she says, no, I am going to pay the money that you need because you cannot leave everything that is part of you. And Nemorino thinks, okay, so then you are in love with me. And she says, no, guy, I'm not in love with you. I'm just paying this money, but you'll be free. You'll be happy. I'm not in love with you. And so Nemorino makes a drama de, perché tu non mami? Because you don't love me, I am going to kill myself. I'm going to disappear from here. That whole drama. But think that this is a very funny, lovely, charming drama, and not that a horrible story like in Manon Lescaut, where she will be dying on the at the desert now. Not a drama, but still go back to the fact that Nemorino is a very lovely guy, a very lovely, charming character. And so he says that he's going to, if you don't love me, I don't want to learn, or I don't want to live any longer. And after that I would call a chantage by him, at the end, Adina says, bene, sapilo, al fin sapilo, tu mi sei caro. You must know at last, you must know that you are beloved, so I love you. And Nemorino says, am I beloved by you? Yes, you are beloved. I love you, I love you. Io t'amo. And he says, Tomami, si t'amo, t'amo, t'amo. Oh, gioia inesprimibile. Oh, what an unbelievable delightness that you love me. So Nemorino is so happy that at the end Adina is saying, quanti ti già misero farti felici or bramo. I would really love you to be so happy. And after that part, there is also another, in this aria or cavatina by the soprano, Adina sings beautiful ornaments and a very lovely melody, and she wraps up this scene where she has declared that at the end she really loved Nemorino. Wraps up with the high note, because this fan service of always giving a high note to the audience is always very much appreciated. So Adina ends up being with Nemorino, something that we could expect. Of course, they stay there and live happily ever after. So if you notice, this is a very simple libretto, a very simple plot, and at the same time, so beautiful, so charming, that puts us always in the greatest of all moods. Whenever there is this great empathy between all the singers, one can always be sure that L'Elisir d'Amore will remain in our minds and in our souls forever. Thank you very much, and hope you will join me for another Parlons series.